Hi, you're listening to Mindset Podcast, spelled with AI, a bi-weekly tech podcast that is shaping what you know and think about AI. My name is David. I'm a tech journalist and entrepreneur, and here with me is Filip, an AI executive. Hi, Filip.
Hi, David. Good to see you in New Year.
Oh, likewise. So, Filip, did you know that Mindset is exactly 1 year old today?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that it is exactly on a day, but feels fine that our small kid already managed to climb to first birthday.
The first episode we published exactly January 9th, 2025, and now January 9th, 2026. We'll see when this comes out. Is when we're recording.
Cool. Let's go for it. So, shall we discuss the year again?
Yeah, let's do it. So you have some very intriguing predictions for AI and what you think is going to happen in 2026.
Well, all predictions are predictions at the beginning. The year might not make them intriguing, so let's see if that is really true. But to kick the things off, so I'll start with I have a 10 pieces. Honestly, the list was a bit longer, but I didn't want to overwhelm the audience. So let's do the top 10 and we might have some bonus things on the side. But I like to start with one which is probably on mind of many people as it touches the OpenAI. And I'll make the prediction first, and then I'll give it a little bit of a context. So my first prediction for 2026 in the AI realm is that OpenAI will be dethroned as the biggest or the most prevalent player in AI space. And the reason why I'm predicting this is that there are actually two tendencies which can cause this to happen, because many people think about AI tools in terms of how many end users are actually using that tool. So that's first dimension on which OpenAI can be dethroned, because the recent developments show that Gemini 3.5 Pro release has been super strong, and the response from OpenAI, the GPT 5.2, was not that strong. I actually checked the traffic development for both of the platforms, and there's very clear dip after the Gemini release, and the 5.2 GPT release has not recovered the situation. So that brings me to the point that if that is going on, it is pretty likely that Google might be actually over jumping or like putting ahead and overtaking OpenAI number of users using the platform. So that's one dimension. But there also gets a second dimension, and that is that the people who are watching this fight of these big frontier labs closely know that this defocus of OpenAI has also caused that Anthropic has been significantly gaining in revenue collected from the AI tools. And so the second dimension on which OpenAI might be dethroned, and that's probably even more ridiculous for some people, is there'll be company, like the highest candidate now being Anthropic, which will collect more revenue from AI token sales and services purchases than OpenAI. So that's the two dimensions where I see that OpenAI might be dethroned, and let's see which of that. Maybe both can happen, but let's see if at least one of those happen.
You know, what happened to me over 2025 and 2026 is I kind of deprioritized
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT and started working more with Claude. And to be honest, I like it more.
Mm.
And it's also like a little bit more consistent. I think it's like, very subjective. Uh, but also there is, so you're in Germany, I'm in Slovakia, and the the subscription tier ChatGPT first introduced in India, the ChatGPT Go also came here, and I have seen so many people to switch from Plus to this Go because it's like that much cheaper, and it basically gives you like, okay, some from time to time you want to use it,
Mm-hmm.
and you can use it, and you want to have access to the new models. So very curious to see how this develops in 2026.
Yeah, there might be like a pricing tweaks to fight the stream. Um, like I've seen an estimate that the code red from some album arrived because they lost about like 200 million users. So if that was true, that would be pretty significant. And this is maybe the reason why they want to kind of come back with a cheaper tier so they can convert some of our customers. But quite honestly, these cheaper tiers probably going to just convert the free tier to something non-free. I don't suspect that this is going to attract a whole new group of users who never touch or never heard of ChatGPT and all of a sudden come to join it for the go. But let's see, maybe in some countries like India, where you have a billion users to acquire, maybe it can work. So let's see where it takes them.
Who knows? So that was your first prediction. Let's go to number 2.
The second one is somewhat related because it might be actually factor for this dethroning or OpenAI keeping the number one position. Because my second prediction for 2026 is that this will be a year where retail investors can participate in in AI boom. Just to explain, so far, even though the frontier labs and AI companies collected enormous amount of capital to go further, like billions and hundreds of billions in total, these were all coming from, let's say, an investment funds or sovereign funds, or let's say limited round of people or companies actually who have that much of a money to invest into AI. Now, in order for the retail investor to also have a chance to take benefit out of it, it needs to be publicly listed. So my prediction for 2026 is that at least three major AI companies, that's AI meaning here that either they are one of the frontier labs or one of the companies heavily using AI services to deliver whatever they are trying to deliver. So at least three of them will list on the, and I would say the Western Hemisphere markets, because we know that there's like a separate development in Asian markets. I think just about these days there should be like MinMax listing and probably some other companies. So I assume that there will be some development on the Asian market as well. But besides that, at least three big AI companies will get listed on the Western Hemisphere stock markets and therefore available for retail investors to take part in the AI investment boom.
Okay, that's interesting.
Would you consider buying any of the shares of AI companies? Or do you believe we are in AI bubble and you shouldn't do that?
So I believe there is a bubble, but not the kind of bubble there was with .com. So it's much more, I would say. So there are speculations for sure, but I think it will get rationalized in 2026. And if some of these companies come to the market, stock market, I think I'll buy.
Cool. Well, you're gonna at least have a chance. That's what my prediction is. Okay. Now that has the link to the first prediction in a way that the biggest question is if OpenAI will make it earlier than Anthropic. And I just want to dwell on a topic for maybe a half a minute to explain the context, because it's probably not that obvious. And it's not clear if being first here is an advantage or disadvantage. So just a few comments to that. Um, Obviously, both of the companies, the primary reason why they are thinking of an IPO first place is it's not nice to be a publicly listed companies in many aspects. I had a privilege of working for a publicly listed company, and like the level of transparency and scrutiny, and let's say also criticism and challenging you go through if you're publicly listed company is pretty significant, especially if you struggle to deliver profit, which many of the AI companies seem to be so far in that seat. So I don't think so they want to become publicly listed just for sake of it. I think it's like a balancing act for them between, hey, we are running out of the options to collect more capital from the traditional VCs, funds and sovereign funds or whatever. They can't give us more money anymore, but we still need more money. So the only way to do it is to make it like open to whoever has a few dollars or euros and wants to invest into it. So that's the primary reason why they want to do it. So in that sense, probably if you go earlier, you're better off because you're the first one in which you can invest, and then you collect a lot of first movers who want to go there. Uh, Secondly, however, is the moment that you go public, your economy and your efficiency and your profitability becomes officially published, right? So if this is not in a good shape, then this might be a bit of an issue, and therefore that's a kind of a counterbalancing act. I would say that OpenAI is probably not going to rush to be the first one for the profitability reasons, especially as they managed to kind of get large financing rounds still from the recent situation. And therefore, one might think that the Anthropic might be a bit of an early jumper for that sake, but let's see. This is not part of my prediction, which one of them will be earlier, but just wanted to give you the context that this might not be necessary rushing to be the first one scenario.
Okay, good.
Cool. You want to go for more?
Yeah, let's continue.
Cool. All right. So the one which is my number 3 is going to be also involving you. So the prediction kind of involves your behavior as well, as a joke. So first of all, the prediction itself is that the autonomous taxi, so cabs, will arrive into Europe in 2026. And my prediction is that there will be at least 5 European cities in which you can try the autonomous taxi drive in 2026. Why is it an important trend? So we have heard all these great stories, and those who had a chance to travel to San Francisco or somewhere in the metropolitan areas where Waymo or Tesla or whoever else operates the autonomous taxis, they were kind of shooting these videos of how unique experience it is and writing about it. So in Europe, you didn't have a chance. There was not a single city in Europe where this would be possible. So it is a big thing, especially because, as we see from US, the moment that you break the ice with the first cities, then the expansion will follow. Because Waymo is opening basically almost every quarter, they open new city. Now they're thinking about New York. If they manage New York, then there's probably no other city in like a Western hemisphere which is more complicated to operate taxi in. So that will be pretty paramount. So I think it is an opening a door to much larger adoption, and this is why it's important. And my second part of a prediction is that David will do a video of riding this autonomous taxi, because I know that you're so eager to try. So we're gonna travel somewhere, and I suspect that you're gonna make some story out of it, some reels or short or whatever you're gonna shoot, and present it to the audience. So let's see.
So do you suppose it's going to be the way it was the first, like the first wave in US, where in the cars there was still a safety driver, or is it going to be fully autonomous like Waymo, where you enter the car and there's virtually no one?
I have been a little bit in discussion with some of these providers, and from the way what they've been kind of discussing the topic, it is not necessarily a decision of the companies themselves. I think the companies themselves feel confident enough to let it go without the additional driver. But this might be subject to how open-minded, or let's say a progressive, the regulators giving the license or giving like a consent for the test of these vehicles will be. So that's going to be a little bit depending. And quite honestly, I'm not too deep into this autonomous vehicles regulation to tell you from back of my head where this is going to happen. But the way that they have been describing it is that definitely want to try both of the models unless regulators force them to do the human only. So I would assume, as there's going to be really different countries where this is going to be tested, that at least in one of the countries, this is going to be also fully autonomous, the Waymo way. Because, I mean, leaving aside this incident which happened in San Francisco lately, where there's an outage of electricity and it was like a little bit of a traffic chaos and the Waymos didn't know what to do and they need to be brought in. I think that the Waymo no driver at all model seems to be pretty same safety standard as in the driver. So a lot of people probably think about this topic from security point of view, and I don't think it's necessary. So I would assume that it is not necessary unless the regulators force the companies to do it nevertheless.
Would you say there will be some pushback?
Of course. And this is a good question. I thank you for asking, because one of the reasons why this might be a little bit more pushed back is that a lot of the cars which are involved in these autonomous drivings are China originated. Because especially like leaving aside Tesla, which is doing it camera only approach, the companies which are doing lidar based vehicles, a lot of them are produced by Chinese manufacturers, which might be a bit of a pushback, as especially in like countries like Germany, the China cars are not the Lieblings of the society. So if these companies are going to deploy vehicles which are going to be notably of kind of Chinese origin, it might be a bit of a pushback. But from the general public, I would say that those who don't like it will ignore it, and those who are eager will gonna try it. Gradually, this will break us for the everybody, because it's going to be evident that not that many accidents are happening and that it's relatively safe. So I would assume that there will be not a pushback from the end users. Maybe the car make or car brand pushback might be somewhat apparent in some of the European states.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah,
Number
before
four.
we do, I just want to do one funny comment which I saw, because there was an article or a blog post from people who are observing the way that the Waymos and the other autonomous cars operate mainly in California. And I don't know if you knew that, but it's funny because the vehicle itself, the biggest issue for it is that it can only move, it is perfectly safe. And therefore, if you don't close the door properly, as you like a passenger, you jump out of the taxi, you don't close the door properly, the vehicle cannot move itself. And in this Waymo, no driver involved, there is no way for the car to close the door autonomously. So, funny enough, one of the biggest incidents, which they still have to somehow a human solve, is that if the passenger steps out of a taxi, autonomous taxi, and doesn't close the door properly, there needs to be other human coming to actually close the door. And they have a portal of kind of volunteers, or let's say quick fix people who literally physically go to the place and close the door of a car, which is kind of funny because you have autonomous vehicles, and it makes perfect sense, because if you leave the door open, then in turning curve or whatever acceleration deceleration, the door can slam open and can hit somebody. So it makes perfect sense that you don't want to drive with your door open. But it's funny like how trivial of a thing can actually inhibit the whole thing. So no suggestions for sabotaging, but kind of not closing the door on taxi is actually the biggest issue for the autonomous taxi.
I think this is where the Zoox cars that Amazon bought or invested in, which are now like on January 9th, it's still this last day of CSS in Las Vegas. So they're like riding around Las Vegas, and they have like self-closing doors. So I guess that's an advantage in this
Maybe.
case.
Good. All right, moving on. We had a little bit of fun with autonomous taxi driving, and I wish for you to try in 2026 somewhere in Europe. Now, the number 4 is a bit less funny, because there's like this ongoing debate to what extent introduction of AI is going to influence the jobs and let's say employment of the people. And here my prediction for 2026 that we're gonna see already in one of the major economies an unemployment spike, which is to some extent going to be attributed also to AI. And just to give it a bit of a context, otherwise this might be, do I believe, am I a AI doomer or am I like AI optimist? But I actually, for making this prediction, this is not like a gut. I do see some trends which push me towards making this prediction. So let me just register a few with you and the rest of the audience. So, firstly, I literally have seen companies who have a new versions of the organigram, so organization charts, where some of the positions are not humans anymore. And what is interesting that it is a hybrid model. So a lot of people maybe think that AI is going to sweep the whole team completely, or maybe AI will be just augmentation and everybody will use it a little bit, and but in total say. So from what I have seen so far, the way that the most progressive companies think about it is, let's identify which roles can be already filled in with autonomous agents, and which cannot. And those which cannot will stay human, and those who can will be replaced by the bots. But that can mean that you will have a manager who has several humans reporting to him and several automatic agents reporting to him as well. So this is what my prediction here is, that we're going to get into this hybrid model. And that means that there will be already kind of real displacements of the people. So that's like a first trend. The second trend, which I want to register, that in last 3 or 4 months, I was shocked by how many different teams has approached me with request to design a complete software development department fully autonomous. And literally, this was not like one or two cases. There was like a lot of the cases which had the same idea. So there seems to be that there's a bubbling trend that a lot of companies are thinking of building either a new teams or like restructuring the existing software development teams into a complete new setup where, let's say, significantly less humans are involved. And then the last piece, which I want to register to support this trend, is that a few days back, I came across this study which was monitoring the hiring levels of the startups. And what they do, they track basically at which stage of the development, how many people are involved in the company. So, how quickly is the team of the startup growing? And what they report now is that the new cohort of the startups, which are now in the making, have significantly less people involved in the startup than it was normal or usual before. And the ratio is 1 to 4. So just to kind of illustrate it on a story, so if certain startup in that particular stage of development had 20 people, now there would be a similar startup or the same startup having just 4 or 5 people involved. And why I'm mentioning this as a trend, because the way this works in economy, and this is also what the article was suggesting, is that this is an early indicator for the major economy development as well, because it's startups who bring this new way of doing things, disrupt the markets, and then the existing incumbents are forced to follow or kind of adapt. And therefore, if we already see startups doing this, that means it's a matter of a time when the competitive pressure will be kind of pushed on to the bigger players as well. And therefore, I think that it is realistic that in the year 2020 things will cause AI will cause a real unemployment issues for some sectors.
Wow, the unemployment is such a, I would say, imminent question and on top of mind of so many people. I just read some headlines this morning that the unemployment or the employment landscape is shifting in that way that until now, basically in a lot of countries, but especially I'm talking about the region where I live in, it was that the employees could choose, right? Like there was so many uh, opportunities for them. And the story, the headline was No, it's shifted. 2026 and onwards is going to be companies are going to be choosing the best ones.
Yeah, it's called the year of the employee or year of the employer. And I think year of 2026 is definitely going to be year of the employer. Let's see if it's like a streak of more than 1 year, but I'm quite sure that 2026 will be a year of the employer because there'll be more people available for the jobs than the positions which are open.
Number 5 is a fun one as well.
Yeah.
Not to have just depression.
Yeah, moving from sour or like dark topics to a bit more fun. So number 5, my prediction for 2026 in AI realm is that there'll be a full-fledged cinema-long movie produced entirely by AI or via AI. Just to be more precise, I don't necessarily predict that also the plot and the story will be designed by AI. But from cinematic point of view, so from the video point of view, all the screens and scenes will be produced by AI. And I don't know if we're gonna make it all the way to that this particular film piece will be in movie theaters or will be in Oscars or whatever festivals you might think of, but I suspect so because the first companies who are going to achieve that probably want to make it at a public stunt and get a recognition for that. So I would also assume that this will be not an obscure somewhere a student on a kind of media university producing this as a college project, but I would assume that this is going to be one of the major either studios or AI companies doing this, and to steal the badge of like this is the first ever cinema movie produced by AI. And 2026 is the year where this is likely to happen.
Mm. I so who's your bet? Who's going to be the first one? Is it going to be a player, an independent player? So 3 tips, right? Is it going to be an independent player, right, like Runaway? Is it going to be second choice, a Chinese video AI startup, or maker? Or 3, is it going to be a US based company
I'm not sure
like
if I would cut
OpenAI?
the cake geographically because it probably doesn't really matter because essentially it can be. I'm gonna make a stupid example. It can be a French film institute using one of the non-French technologies to make it happen. So I don't want to cut it geographically per se, but just I think I know where you're trying to arrive with that question, so I still try to answer it. Um, I honestly think it's going to be either like, look, you need a technology for that, so a good model, and you need a lot of money for that because it's going to cost still quite some money to, as a kind of a side project, to burn the tokens to do it. Even though it's going to be significantly less than the budget of the movie, but the big cinema studios are now in a situation that they don't dare to spend like hundreds of millions for the give it a try. They need the hits. They need successful movies, and basically their operation has been used on like trying to get the hit. So I would be surprised if it was one of the bigger labs. Maybe if somebody has a courage to try it in the bigger lab, then okay. But what I suspect this is going to be is this is going to be one of the big frontier labs to demonstrate the capability. So either one of the big Chinese players, because the Chinese movie producing models are in a top notch, or our dear OpenAI trying to push back and prove that they are still capable to do in whatever sphere and area they choose to be and try to book because they signaled that they would like to do something like that, but this was before Code Red, so I'm not sure if it's still valid. But I would assume that is going to be either one of the Chinese models, um, but used probably by non-Chinese film company or some big frontier labs trying to demonstrate the power of it.
Okay. Not an answer that I expected, but let's move on.
Well, what is it with me? You don't always get the answers you expect.
This was a very PC kind of answer.
Yep. All right. So moving on. Number six prediction for 2026 in AI is that Meta will significantly scale down the open source line of their models. So the Llama family, or whatever it could be even renamed, but even if it renamed, would be. And the reason for that is obvious from the recent developments, also from the Manu's acquisition and other things, that they probably are not now in a mood of trying to push the open source development. I think with Jan Yakun departing, Meta is even more likely this to happen, because I can imagine that he was one of the proponents of the OpenAI line, sorry, open source line of models, because he's a researcher by heart. At least that's what he also said in this Financial Times famous, or maybe infamous, Financial Times interview. So I think that it is obvious that whatever Alexander Wang and Mark Zuckerberg have in mind for the super intelligence teams does not seem to be like releasing new and new versions of the LLMs. And quite honestly, like last time they were trying to put out an LLM model was somewhere, remind me, Aprilish, Mayish time last year, when they were trying to go with Llama releases, which didn't go really well, and they then didn't really happen in first place. And silence ever since. So if they didn't work on the models continuously, they would be also quite way behind now. Because if you see the progress that the models have made from, let's say, May, April time until now, it is really a significant boost. So if they were not silently working on the models anyway, which I suspect they were not, because they had different agenda, they were already way behind. So that's the prediction. This comes with a small extra, which is one of the which didn't make it in a top 10, but it's still probably nice to register as a bonus prediction, and that is that I think as a result of Meta like leaving the open source space free for AI, is that one of the Chinese models, LLM models, is going to take a number one spot in, I don't know, LLM Arena or benchmarks or whatever for at least some short time in 2026. So that's one of the things which I expect, because it kind of already happened with DeepSeek R1 when it went just about a year ago. Probably we're in almost having an anniversary of that soon. So um, it was already big enough. It was good enough to compete in those times, but it was not so widely adopted. Now the Chinese models are so much easier to adopt thanks to Hugging Face and other platforms, and so I think that when now the Chinese model comes, as was the case for with Kimi, as was the case with Minimax, this was the case with the DeepSeek releases, they are more likely to get more attention and more usage, and therefore more promotion. So I find it quite likely that we might have a situation in 2026 that for some limited time window, the Chinese LLM will be the biggest, or the best, not the biggest, the best in a world that we are operating. So that's just a small extra on top of the meta prediction.
Okay. Um, would you say it's going to be? Would you have again, or like would it be someone like big labs like Alibaba, or someone from small labs, which is the creators of DeepSeek?
Yeah, I would more bet on one of the bigger companies, but what you need to understand that the dynamics of developing and releasing the models in China is a bit different than a Western world. So just two sentences to that to explain what I mean. Um, the way that the Western companies operate is they research the model, they want to make it public for two reasons. A, they want to users really get the best model, and B, they want to make it as a kind of a public stunt or branding that, hey, we are the best ones. Especially, I mean, Elon Musk is like pushing so hard for like getting a recognition for Grok and models anytime they release a new one, and so does, by the way, OpenAI and Claude's, to be fair. In China, I think the situation is very different, because in China you can release model which the China community, or let's say whoever can access to the Chinese models, will take benefit of. Rest of the world does not know, and you still fulfilled what you were kind of trying to do, because the market is big enough for you, and probably even the Chinese government does not appreciate for you to release the model for the other companies and countries to be used. So I suspect that there is like a layer of the models which are already in somewhat testing or operations in China, which we are not aware of, which are probably at par or maybe slightly better of what we can see above the water level. And therefore, it might be the case that there are already models which would be challenging the Western frontier labs, but were not approved to be released by the Chinese authorities, right? And this dynamic, if they want to kind of show more muscle and like show the world, hey, we actually do have these models, this is going to be a bit of more of a political decision. So this is also why I'm not sure which of the companies will be allowed to release such a model to the rest of the world. Whereas I'm quite sure it's going to exist both in these deep seeks of the world and both in the Alibabas of the world as well.
I saw one headline, I think it was in the Financial Times, that the Chinese government greenlit three VC funds for this year with a couple, hundred million dollars. So I think there is this ambition to muscle up. So I'm quite curious, like what's 2026 is going to bring in this regard, especially in the West China kind of AI fight.
Yep. All right. So moving away from the China models and a discussion about the open source to an area which is a little bit related to it. And this is probably the only prediction which is somewhat technical, so I need a bit of explain what I mean by that. But my seventh prediction for 2026 in AI realm is that we will experience a transformation of the software teams from development focused to testing focused, or let's say from development first to testing first. And what that means, so just for those who do not like work in the software companies, um, the way that the software is being built now, or mostly being built now, is that you have somebody, a user, it can be even an external user, who defines the like request or proposal for a feature, and then there is like a team which sits down, tries to translate the feature into what that would mean for new components needed, new integrations needed, new data sources needed, and so on, and writes a blueprint for how this is going to be implemented. And then there is a team which takes the blueprint and goes and writes the code. And at the very end, there is probably some other team for QA who is going to test if it is actually delivering on the original requests, right? But quite honestly, if you look at the time allocated to these three steps, so building blueprint, coding it, and testing, majority of the focus and also majority of the human labor investment is in first and second stage of it. Now, this is what is going to change, and the new model is going to be done in a way that it is clear now that given the progress of the self-coding models like Claude or Kimi or the other ones, it's clear that computer can already write at par a code with the human programmers. So, given a good specification, it can do exactly the same or mostly the same job as humans. What the reasoning models brought this year or last year is that it can already think through the blueprint as well, pretty well. So it's no point of the human trying to compete with computer in phase one and phase two, because it quality wise can do at par with more or even better than like a regular human, and it can do it so much faster. Like I had this example that we discussed. I was building an application which was at final was like 3.5 thousand lines of the code. Like it got written by Claude, Anthropic Claude, in less than 2 hours. So no human can write 3.5 thousand lines of a code in less than 2 hours. So that is obvious. So the prediction here is that what the humans will do as a result of it, they will not burn their time in phase 1 and phase 2, but they will design the software in a way that the biggest value added of the humans will be to write tests strong enough to actually validate if the software designed by the autonomous coding engines is good enough, and also to test for the edge cases, because what I have experienced, and probably many people who are using self-coding have experienced as well, is that if you come across with, let's say, counter examples or edge cases which don't work for the original code, and you throw it back on an LLM, sometimes what they try to do to cheat is they like write a specific exception for that edge case. So they would like, okay, I generally do it this way, but if input value this, then do this as an output value because you commented this doesn't work. So if you are not good in testing, then you can get in a situation that the software is trying to cheat and is trying to only accommodate or please the exceptions by kind of making them exception in a code as well. So that's the thing. So it would shift. So my prediction is that a significantly more time of the software development teams and also human capacity will be now devoted to the testing part. And people who were mainly writing blueprints and code will now mainly write testing cases or testing environments. And some of the most progressive CTOs of the world also say that this is going to change the paradigm. So the software engineers will become testing first. So first write a good set of a tests, which is ensuring that this feature is exactly doing and covering all the edge cases that you can think of, and then let the machine to build it and just use your test to prove it is doing the way it is exactly doing. So that's the prediction number 7, that the test-driven development environment will dominate, and um, new roles or like shift in responsibilities towards this end of a spectrum. How does that sound to you?
It sounds to me that whenever I worked with developers, programmers, they kind of looked down on testers, to be honest. And the new paradigm, as you're telling me, and as I suspected for some time, is going to be like the best software is actually going to be developed by teams who have really good testers, human testers.
Yes, but there can be also one dynamic that I agree that usually also if you look at the salary bands, the testing jobs were usually the lower paid jobs in the hierarchy of IT positions. So what I also think, this is not going to be in a way that you're gonna hire more testers and fire the engineers. I also think that the engineers finally will have to involve themselves much more in the Q&A testing, because they lose the first two pieces which they've been kind of working on. So they will be not necessary for the first two pieces, and maybe many of them move into the testing, maybe even without changing their job title. Just the mix of the time they need to invest into testing is going to be much higher.
Interesting. Let's move on.
Okay, so number 8 is also something which we have a long debates about, and I know that you stand a little bit on a different side of the river here. So let's see how 2026 was going to resolve our kind of duality here. But my prediction for my 8th prediction for 2026 is that we will see at least 2 new AI device forms. What I mean by that is that, okay, there's been like Meta Ray-Bans. There's been also some attempts on pins or similar kind of pendants. So I don't mean any of those. My prediction is not that Meta will come with new version of the Ray-Ban glasses, which I think they're gonna come up with anyway. But that's not the point here. I think we're gonna see 2 completely new forms, factor forms of the AI devices emerging in 2026. Now, to be fair, I don't dare to predict how successful this will be, because this is a little bit dependent on how well cooked the product will be when it goes out, if they try to kind of compete, how many other players have the same idea, and so on. But I do think that we'll have at least two new device types coming out in 2026, and there'll be some discussion about it. So, which one would you prefer? What are you longing for, David, in your AI devices?
Um, I recently saw on CS there was Panos Panay, who's the current chief of hardware at Amazon and worked in Microsoft before, and he had an interesting note that he shared, and he said that he doesn't think we have yet seen the right form factor
Mm,
for an AI gadget.
I would agree.
So you're both on the same boat, I would say. I'm in a different boat. I think this year the dominant AI gadgets have already arrived in the past 2 years, and they're going to be these pendants type of things, like any kind of things, even the rumored OpenAI pen, and smart glasses. I don't think this year we're going to see significant new form factor.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Well, yeah, you heard my prediction. I heard yours. So I'll be kind of collecting the news along the year, and let's come back to it. Maybe I'm quite sure that if any of this comes, we're going to devote a separate mindset episode to it. So I predict we're going to have a devices episodes in 2026. Let's see if it comes.
Okay, let's go for it then.
Okay, number 9, coming almost to the end of the list, is that year 2026 in AI will be year of a token efficiency. What I mean by that is that so far, most of the regular retail users are using some of the, let's say, subscription tiers of being it free or paid from the major labs, but they are not necessarily exposed to, let's say, raw token consumption. So they are, of course, here and there limited by their tiers. So they might here and there receive a message that you ran out of your kind of capacity, but they don't have a counter of how many tokens that they spend, and there's not even a public limit on how much you actually have available. And I don't think it's even a static value, to be honest. I think it is dynamically steered based on what the demand is, because ultimately it's down to how many GPUs the company has to run your queries on. And if everybody runs the queries at the same time, then everybody has a less capacity available to him or herself. So my prediction for 2026 is that we will enter an era where the users and the companies will get much more conscious about the token spent and token efficiency. And the reason for that is threefold. So I try to make it really quick. First, the models coming out of Asia seem to be so much more token efficient. This was one of the biggest thing that when DeepSeek went out, that not only it was doing at par with like contemporary models back then when it was released, it was doing at par with significantly lower token footprint, right? So that is one trend which is kind of pushing for it. Second trend is that, as you can see, especially in November and December 2025 was very good indicator of that. We can get a new best of class model every week, right? And the duration of a best of class model is probably just a few weeks until something else comes. So that brings you to the point that if you are a designer, you can't focus on one particular model because in a few weeks you can get another one. So you're a little bit model agnostic by design. And when you are model agnostic, then what else would be a factor for you to pick? If they are quality-wise pretty comparable, then obviously the price will be something which you're going to look after. So I think the token efficiency will be one of the stronger factors. I'm not sure if it's going to go all the way to that the Frontier Labs will introduce the token efficiency metrics also into, let's say, tiers, and that they will switch from these subscription models to pay-as-you-go token burn. I don't think so. This is likely to happen, even though you can't completely rule it out. But definitely, at least in an API realm where you're consuming the AI by token, this is going to be a big topic for 2026.
I'm not in this realm, so I only play with APIs a little bit, and I see how much more cost effective that is in terms of like experimenting that with having a paid 20, 50, $100 of subscription. But I can imagine if you're like a heavy user, you kind of want to optimize this.
Yep. And finally, we get to number 10. So here we are. So my last prediction for 2026 in AI Real, number 10, is that this year will be year of the AI agents turning into services. What I mean by that is that in 2025, we're still not a year away from vibe coding, term coding, which is ridiculous because it feels like a century that we have a vibe coding here. But still, it's not even a 12 months from Andre Kapati's coining of this term. But what we saw in 2025 was that companies and developers and the AI enthusiasts were coming to building the agents first place. So there are different approaches to that. Some want to go code wise, some want to go like more, let's say, workflow, drag and drop wise, which is more like NAND, Makes, and Zapiers of the world. So I'm not prescribing which way to go, but basically in 2025, we got to the point that even a not strongly educated person can build an AI agent, some form or shape. Now, of course, what they were then doing, they were trying to sell these blueprints or these workflows as a kind of a packages around, but they were still not done in a way like, hey, you log in here and you can use this service for whatever. Even Manus was going a little bit that direction, to be honest. So this is why it's interesting how this is going to change after the acquisition from Meta. But year 2026 will be a year where you can buy uh, let's say a service of AI agents, also priced on the result, not priced on, hey, you have like 5 attempts to do this, but you can buy it as a I don't know, here's an agent which solves the uh, let's say customer support issue, and for every I'm gonna charge you for every successfully resolved case that the agent manages to do, no matter how many sentences it needs to exchange with the user, or how long it's going to take, or how many iterations it's going to need, or how many systems it's going to need to look into. So that's the thing. Now, I know when we discussed this before, you were always asking me, Filip, do you think it's going to take it all the way to a human employee's role being offered as a packages? So let me update you on how I think about it for a while. I think that in 2025 we have seen already first roles which are replaced. I don't know if you have seen these billboards and the posters, but in US there's also these promotions. Don't hire humans anymore. Put an agentic robot instead of it. So we, I think, already crossed the psychological threshold of this is possible or kind of realistic to happen. But quite honestly, it was more of an obscure thing to happen. So not many companies were thinking about that way. I think that 2026 can be a year where, thanks to these AI agents being packaged as a service, so agent as a service, kind of a principle, they're gonna rival for sure the software as a service model and maybe even the hiring model. So you will be able to plug in an operator, because if you think about it, for companies which were using like offshoring of employees into different jurisdictions, India being very often kind of coming like a first to mind, but also, I mean, Slovakia, in which you live and I originally come from, has a lot of shared service centers. So these are basically passed on work to an external entities. And if they are doing good quality job, how much of a difference is that you don't channel the request to another company, but you channel it to an AI API, which does the same thing. So I think that even the human role kind of models or software, AI software is likely to appear, but at least the services of the agents will be packaged, and you can buy them and you can consume them by the results count. That's what my prediction for 2026 is.
Again, this plays a little bit into the prediction number 4 regarding unemployment, but I would say like it's a bit more specific. Still scary. Well, scary if you're thinking of like society, what will happen. Exciting if you're like a technology nerd and you want to see like how this is going to play out. And oh, who's gonna be my first like agentic colleague?
I can tell you, David, that the way that these people which are on a cutting edge of the technology work is that they wake up on a Monday with this thrill of, hey, I'm gonna build something. Then on Tuesday morning they realize that what implications it might be, and then they're a little bit in fighting with it until the rest of the week. Shall I be more in a Monday mood or shall I be more in a Tuesday mood? It's not easy, and of course it needs also a lot of discussion, but I think the year 2026 is when this is going to happen, and it's probably good for people to think about it first place. Maybe how would I react when this actually comes, and what is my strategy to deal with that, rather than kind of rushing through the news over the year. So this is why it's good maybe to mention it as a prediction for this year as well, so that people can think about it and maybe build a mind model around, okay, if this really happens, what my response to is.
Okay, Philip. So that's it. 10 predictions for 2026. I'm feeling quite strong about them, but let's see what happens in a year.
Yep. Well, thanks for joining me. I hope this year it's going to be a nice second year of mindsets. We're going to bring a lot of other topics again, and I might signal to the audience that we also might have a new audio elements coming along our podcast. So stay tuned, and don't be surprised if you hear some new jingles or audio accompanying the mindsets. Because we definitely want to step in that direction as well.
Thank you all, and that's all for this episode. You can find Mindset in your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube. It really helps if you give us a follow and like on YouTube, and we can, spread and more people can find us. So don't forget that, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn, the podcast, and both of us. So you can find all of this information on mindsetpodcast.com. Don't forget it's spelled with AI. Thank you, and bye, Filip. Till next time.